Admiral Kextar stood in the command center of the Velithari flagship, staring at the empty space where Earth's orbital stations should have been. The massive structures that had housed millions of humans were simply gone. No debris, no signs of battle. Just empty space and the quiet hum of his ship's engines. "Run the scan again," he ordered his communications officer. "Sir, we've scanned 17 times. There are no human signals anywhere in this system." The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked slowly. In his 300 years of life, he had never seen anything like this. Entire civilizations didn't just disappear overnight. Yet here they were, looking at proof that they could. Captain Zorthok from the Zoran Federation ship contacted him through the communication link. "Admiral, our deep space scanners show the same thing across all human territories. Every colony, every outpost, every ship, they're all gone." "How is that possible?" Kextar asked. "The humans had over 40 colonies and thousands of ships spread across dozens of star systems. We don't know, but they took everything with them, even their garbage. On the planet below, investigation teams were finding the same thing everywhere. Human cities stood empty but clean. Power was still running. Water systems worked perfectly. The humans had even left detailed instructions for maintaining their facilities. But there wasn't a single human anywhere." Dr. Vel Nara, the galaxy's leading expert on human behavior, stood in an empty human school on the planet's surface. Children's drawings still hung on the walls. Desks were arranged in neat rows. Books lay open on tables as if students had just stepped out for lunch. "They planned this carefully," she said to her research team. "Look at how organized everything is. This wasn't a panic escape. They took months, maybe years to prepare." Her assistant, a young Kethmaran named Silvek, picked up a human book from one of the desks. "But why leave everything else behind? These facilities are worth billions of credits." Dr. Velnara walked to the window and looked out at the empty playground. Swings moved gently in the breeze, but no laughter filled the air. Because they wanted us to know, they chose to leave. Back in space, representatives from all the major galactic powers were gathering for an emergency meeting. The Velithari Empire, the Kethmaran Collective, and the Zoran Federation had spent the last 50 years trying to bring humanity in line with galactic standards. The humans were too wild, too unpredictable. They asked too many questions and refused to accept simple answers. Chancellor Morden of the Kethmaran Collective activated the holographic meeting system. His ancient face appeared as a blue projection in the command centers of dozens of ships. "Fellow leaders, we face an unprecedented situation. The humans have vanished." "Good riddance," said General Vaktul of the Zoran Federation. "They were nothing but trouble anyway, always starting fights, always questioning our decisions." "I agree," said Empress Lyrada of the Velithari Empire. "Just last year they refused to sign the Cultural Harmony Agreement. They said it violated their freedom of expression, as if every species should be allowed to say whatever they want." Chancellor Morden nodded slowly. "The humans never understood that order and stability require sacrifice. They wanted to keep their chaotic ways while benefiting from galactic civilization." The other leaders agreed. For decades, humanity had been a problem. They refused to follow proper diplomatic procedures. When the galaxy's food distribution system was inefficient, humans created their own networks instead of waiting for official approval. When pirates attacked trade routes, human ships would respond immediately instead of filing proper reports and waiting for authorized forces. "Remember the Kador incident?" General Vaktul continued. "Pirates were raiding civilian ships for months. We had committees studying the problem, proper procedures being followed. Then human ships just attacked the pirates without permission. No paperwork, no authorization codes, they just did it." "Barbaric," agreed Empress Lyrada. "They saved those civilians, yes, but they completely ignored proper military protocols." The leaders spent hours discussing humanity's many violations of galactic order. There was the time humans shared advanced medical technology with primitive species without getting approval from the Development Council. There was their refusal to stop their noisy, emotional music that disturbed sensitive alien species. There was their insistence on individual voting rights in colonies, where collective decision-making was more efficient. They never learned to respect authority Chancellor Morden concluded. Perhaps this disappearance is for the best. The galaxy will be more peaceful without their constant disruptions. Meanwhile, on human worlds, alien cleanup crews were documenting everything they found. In government buildings, they discovered thousands of reports that humans had filed over the years. Warnings about pirate activities in remote sectors. Research on diseases that were beginning to spread to other species. Detailed studies of ancient alien technology that was starting to malfunction. Most of these reports had been ignored or rejected by galactic authorities. Too alarmist, they said. Too focused on unlikely problems. Humans always worried too much about things that probably wouldn't happen. Agent Kilvar of Galactic Intelligence was reading through a stack of human military reports. Look at this, he said to his partner. 3 years ago, human scouts reported unusual activity in the darkness sector. They said something was building ships out there. The darkness sector? His partner replied. That's empty space. Nothing lives there. That's what Command said too. They told the humans to stop wasting resources on impossible threats. Kilvar kept reading. Report after report of humans detecting strange signals, finding evidence of unknown civilizations, discovering threats that the rest of the galaxy didn't want to acknowledge. Every report had been dismissed or filed away without investigation. They tried to warn us about so many things, Kilvar said quietly. Back on the Velithari flagship, Admiral Kekstar was reviewing the final messages from human territories. The last transmission from Earth had been simple. We wish you peace and prosperity. May you find the harmony you seek. No threats, no anger, no demands for apologies. Just a polite goodbye. Dr. Velnara's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, I've found something interesting in the human archives. What is it, Doctor? A document called Final Statement to the Galactic Community. It's addressed to all of us. The Admiral authorized the transmission. On screens across the fleet, human writing appeared in translation. To our galactic neighbors, we have tried for 50 years to work within your systems while maintaining our core values of freedom, justice, and individual dignity. We understand that our ways seem chaotic and dangerous to you. We understand that you believe order and stability are more important than the principles we hold dear. We respect your right to choose your own path. We ask only that you respect our right to choose ours. We go now to build something new far from here. We bear no anger, but we will not compromise who we are to fit who you want us to be. Live well. The transmission ended. Across the galactic fleet, alien officers stared at empty screens. For the first time, many of them wondered if they had misunderstood something important about their human neighbors. In the days that followed, the galaxy's major powers began dividing up human territories. The Velithari claimed the industrial worlds. The Kethmoran took the research stations. The Zoran Federation secured the strategic outposts. Everything is working out perfectly, General Vuktul announced at the next council meeting. We now have access to all human resources without having to deal with human problems. But as alien teams took control of human facilities, they began to discover how complex these systems really were. The humans hadn't just built machines. They had created networks of relationships, backup systems, and creative solutions to problems that other species had never even noticed. Still, the galactic leaders remained confident. They had superior technology, ancient wisdom, and proper organizational structures. How hard could it be to maintain what humans had built? The galaxy was about to find out. 6 months had passed since humanity's disappearance, and Captain Jexalon was starting to hate his new assignment. The Velithari Empire had put him in charge of maintaining human trade routes through the Outer Rim territories. It should have been simple work, but nothing was going as planned. Captain, we've lost another cargo ship, his communications officer reported. That's the 5th one this month. Jexalon's tentacles writhed with frustration. Where did this happen? The Kessler Pass, sir. Same as the others. The Kessler Pass had been one of humanity's busiest trade routes. Human ships had traveled through it daily for over 20 years without major problems. Now alien vessels were disappearing regularly. What do our security reports say? Jexalon asked. The area is perfectly safe, sir. Our sensors show no hostile activity. That was the problem. According to all official data, These trade routes were secure. The galactic authorities had spent decades mapping every dangerous area, cataloging every threat, and creating detailed safety protocols. The human ships should have been just as vulnerable as everyone else's, but they weren't. Somehow, human traders had moved through space that was now proving deadly to everyone else. Lieutenant Cavmore approached the captain with a datapad. "Sir, I've been studying human shipping records. They're very strange." "How so?" "Well, officially, humans followed all the same routes we do. But when you look at their actual flight paths, they took dozens of small detours that aren't in any official database." Jexalon looked at the data. Human ships had indeed followed different paths, but the detours seemed random. A slight course change here, a brief stop there, a route that went around empty space instead of through it. "Why would they do that?" the captain asked. "I don't know, sir. Maybe they were just being inefficient." Meanwhile, in the Keth Moran research facility on the human world of New Geneva, Dr. Silvek was having his own problems. The humans had left behind incredible scientific equipment, but none of the Keth Moran scientists could make it work properly. "The quantum resonance calibrator is giving us random readings again," reported research assistant Nextar Dr. Silvek examined the machine with growing frustration. It was clearly a sophisticated piece of equipment, more advanced than anything the Keth Moran had built. The humans had left detailed instruction manuals that seemed clear and logical, but every time they tried to use the machines, something went wrong. "Perhaps the humans built faulty equipment," suggested Nextar. "No," Dr. Silvek replied. "Look at their research logs. These machines produced amazing results for decades. They discovered cures for 17 different diseases using this equipment. Then why can't we make it work?" Dr. Silvek didn't have an answer. The instruction manuals were perfect. The maintenance schedules were detailed and precise. Every component was labeled and explained. But somehow the alien scientists couldn't reproduce the results that humans had achieved routinely. In the Zoran Federation military headquarters, General Vaktul was dealing with an even more serious problem. Conflicts were breaking out across the galaxy at an alarming rate. "Sir, the Kaldar Republic has declared war on the Mycen Alliance," reported Intelligence Officer Rexstan. "What? Why?" "A territorial dispute over mining rights in the Vega system." General Vaktul brought up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked active conflicts, and there were far too many of them. "What happened to the peace talks?" "They broke down 3 days ago. Both sides refused to negotiate." This was happening everywhere. Species that had coexisted peacefully for decades were suddenly at each other's throats over issues that had never caused problems before. Border disputes that had been stable for generations were erupting into violence. "What about our peacekeeping forces?" the general asked. "Stretched thin, sir. We're trying to manage 17 different conflicts with resources designed for maybe 3 or 4. General Vaktul studied the map with growing concern. Something was different about these conflicts. They were more intense, more bitter than usual. Negotiations that should have been simple were failing completely. "Sir," Rexadan continued, "I've been reviewing our files, and I noticed something interesting. In the past, many of these disputes were resolved through human mediation." "Human mediation? That's impossible. Humans weren't authorized to conduct official diplomatic missions." "No, sir, but they did a lot of unofficial talking. Human traders would carry messages between conflicted parties. Human colonists would host informal meetings. Human diplomats would attend negotiations as observers and somehow help people find compromises." The general frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Human diplomacy was chaotic and emotional. They never followed proper protocols." "Yes, sir, but somehow it worked." On the planet Keth Prime, Chancellor Morden was receiving similar reports from across Keth Moran territory. Systems that had run smoothly for centuries were starting to break down. "The food distribution network is experiencing major delays," reported Economic Advisor Telnock. "How is that possible? We have the most efficient distribution system in the galaxy." "Yes, sir, but several key supply routes are no longer functioning. The automated systems keep shutting down for maintenance." Chancellor Morden accessed the distribution network's status reports. Everything looked perfect on paper. Supplies were moving according to schedule, maintenance was being performed properly, and all safety protocols were being followed. "If everything is working correctly, why are people going hungry?" "We're not sure, sir. The systems say food is being delivered, but somehow it's not reaching the right places at the right times." Telnock brought up a comparison chart. "Sir, I noticed that during the human era, Our distribution efficiency was actually 30% higher than it is now. That's impossible. Humans didn't have access to our distribution systems. No, sir, but they ran parallel supply networks that somehow complemented ours. When our systems had problems, human traders would fill in the gaps. When our automated schedules failed, human ships would make emergency deliveries. The Chancellor stared at the data in confusion. According to every official analysis, human involvement in galactic commerce had been disruptive and inefficient. But the numbers suggested something very different. Back on the Velithari flagship, Admiral Kextar was reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Every alien government was experiencing similar problems. Trade routes failing, research equipment malfunctioning, conflicts escalating, supply systems breaking down. Dr. Velnara had been studying these patterns for weeks. Admiral, I think I'm beginning to understand what's happening. Please explain, Doctor. The humans weren't just living alongside our systems. They were actively maintaining them. All those little detours their ships took, they were checking for space hazards that our sensors missed. All their unofficial diplomacy, they were preventing conflicts before they became official problems. All their parallel supply networks, they were fixing failures in our systems before we even noticed them. Admiral Kextar processed this information slowly. Are you saying that humans were secretly running maintenance on galactic civilization? Not secretly, openly. We just didn't understand what we were seeing. We thought they were being chaotic and disruptive, but they were actually solving problems that we didn't know existed. The Admiral looked out at the stars. Why didn't they tell us? They tried. Remember all those reports we dismissed as alarmist? All those warnings we ignored? Humans kept trying to explain the problems they were fixing, but we thought they were just complaining about imaginary issues. As if to emphasize the point, an emergency alert appeared on the Admiral's screen. Another trade ship had disappeared in the Kessler Pass, the 15th one in 6 months. Sir, his communications officer said urgently, we're receiving a distress signal from the merchant vessel Prosperity. They're under attack by unknown ships. Send a rescue squadron immediately. Sir, our nearest ships are 3 hours away. Admiral Kextar closed his eyes. 6 months ago, there would have been human patrol ships in that area. They would have responded to the distress call in minutes. But humans didn't follow proper patrol schedules. They just showed up wherever they were needed, whenever they were needed. Admiral, Dr. Velnara said quietly, I think we made a very serious mistake. Around the galaxy, other alien leaders were beginning to reach the same conclusion. The problems were getting worse, not better. Systems that had worked perfectly for centuries were failing. Peace that had lasted for decades was crumbling. And in the empty spaces where human voices used to offer unwanted advice and unauthorized assistance, there was only silence. The galaxy was finally getting the order and stability it had wanted. It was also discovering what that order had really cost. 2 years after humanity's disappearance, Engineer Prime Zekthul received the kind of emergency call that ended careers. The ancient defense grid, a massive automated system that protected the galaxy's core worlds, had started shooting at everything that moved. How many ships have been destroyed? He asked his emergency response team. 43 so far, replied technical specialist Mortex, including 2 diplomatic vessels and a hospital ship. Zekthul felt his blood chill. The ancient defense grid had been built by the precursors, a race that had vanished millions of years ago. For centuries, it had protected the galaxy's most important worlds from invasion. Now it was treating every ship as an enemy. Have we tried the standard shutdown codes? Yes, sir. The system isn't responding to any commands. Zekthul looked at the technical readouts with growing panic. The defense grid consisted of thousands of automated weapons platforms spread across hundreds of star systems. If they couldn't shut it down, space travel would become impossible in the galaxy's most populated regions. Sir, Mortex continued, I've been reviewing the maintenance logs. The last successful repair was performed by human engineers 18 months ago. Humans? That's impossible. The precursor technology is far too advanced for such a primitive species. That's what we thought too, sir. But according to these records, humans have been maintaining the grid for over 30 years. Zekthul examined the files in disbelief. Page after page of repair reports, all signed by human engineers. The work was detailed, innovative, and completely successful, but it also broke every known rule about precursor technology. "This makes no sense," he muttered. "Precursor systems can only be maintained using authorized Kethmoran procedures." "Yes, sir. But the humans apparently didn't know that. They just fixed whatever was broken using their own methods." Meanwhile, on the medical research station orbiting Velithar Prime, Dr. Nixara was facing a crisis that made the defense grid problem look simple. A plague called the Withering Death was spreading across dozens of worlds, and nothing they tried could stop it. "How many infected now?" she asked her research team. "Over 2 million across 17 planets," reported medical technician Veltar. "The infection rate is increasing exponentially." Dr. Nixara had been fighting diseases for over 200 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The Withering Death attacked the nervous system in ways that seemed to defy all known medical science. Patients would be perfectly healthy one day and completely paralyzed the next. "What about the experimental treatments?" "All failures, doctor. We've tried every antiviral, every synthetic compound, every genetic therapy in our database." Dr. Nixara reviewed the case files again, hoping to find something they had missed. Then she noticed a note in the medical database. "Research discontinued due to lack of funding. See Human Medical Archive for continued work." "Human Medical Archive?" she said aloud. "Yes, doctor. Apparently human researchers were working on this disease for over a decade. They believed it would eventually become a major threat." "What did they discover?" Veltar accessed the human files. According to this, they had developed a working cure. The treatment was in final testing phases when they disappeared. Dr. Nixara stared at the data in shock. The human research was decades ahead of anything the galactic medical community had attempted. Their approach was completely different from standard protocols, but the results were undeniable. Why wasn't this research shared with the medical council? "It was, doctor. 3 times. The council rejected it each time as unscientific speculation based on insufficient evidence. But the greatest crisis was yet to come. In the distant outer rim, a new military force was rising that would make all other problems seem trivial. Admiral Kextar stood in his command center, watching the holographic display with mounting horror. 37 star systems had already fallen to the enemy. Entire populations had been wiped out without mercy. "Who are they?" he asked Intelligence Officer Lindar. "They call themselves the Purifiers. Their leader is someone called the Great Cleanser. We don't know his real name or what species he belongs to. What do they want? Complete galactic purification. They believe that most intelligent species are inferior and should be eliminated. Only the pure races deserve to survive." Kextar studied the enemy ships on his display. Their technology was advanced, their tactics were brutal, and their success rate was terrifying. Every battle they fought ended in complete victory. "How are they so effective?" "Our combined fleets should be more than a match for any single military force." "That's the problem, sir. Our fleets aren't combined. The Purifiers attack one species at a time and the others don't help because they think they'll be safe." This was exactly the kind of threat that the galaxy's ancient peace had never prepared them for. For thousands of years, conflicts had been resolved through negotiation, compromise, and mutual respect for established order. The Purifiers didn't negotiate. They simply destroyed everything that didn't meet their standards of purity. "Sir," Lindar continued, "I've been analyzing their tactics and I found something disturbing. They seem to know exactly which systems are most vulnerable, which supply lines to cut and which defenses to avoid. How is that possible?" "I think they've been planning this for decades. According to our intelligence files, human scouts reported unusual activity in Purifier territory 3 years ago." Admiral Kextar pulled up the old human reports. Sure enough, there were detailed warnings about military buildup, weapons development, and hostile intentions in the regions where the Purifiers were now based. What was our response to these reports? We told the humans to stop wasting resources on imaginary threats. The irony was bitter. The humans had tried to warn them about every crisis the galaxy was now facing. The defense grid malfunctions, the spreading plague, the rise of the Purifiers. All of it had been predicted in human reports that were dismissed as alarmist nonsense. On Keth Prime, Chancellor Morden was holding an emergency session with the galaxy's remaining leaders. The holographic conference room was filled with worried faces from dozens of species. "Fellow leaders," he began, "we face an unprecedented crisis. Our ancient systems are failing, deadly plagues are spreading, and a hostile force is destroying entire civilizations." "What do you propose we do?" asked General Vaktul, whose own forces had been decimated in 3 failed battles against the Purifiers. "We need to adapt quickly. Our traditional methods aren't working against these new threats." Empress Lear Ada activated her communication link. "Perhaps we should consider unconventional approaches. The humans often used unorthodox methods that somehow achieved success." "You're suggesting we lower ourselves to human standards?" General Vaktul replied with disgust. "I'm suggesting we learn from their successes," the Empress said firmly. "Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford." Chancellor Morden nodded slowly. "The Empress is right. We need to study human methods and see if we can apply them to our current situation." But as alien researchers began examining human techniques, they discovered a troubling truth. Human methods weren't just different from galactic standards. They were fundamentally incompatible with how other species thought and operated. Humans approached problems with a combination of creativity, stubbornness, and reckless courage that other species found impossible to replicate. They would try solutions that seemed crazy until they worked. They would ignore safety protocols to save lives. They would fight hopeless battles because surrender was worse than death. Dr. Vel Nara presented her findings to the Emergency Council. The human approach to problem-solving requires a mindset that most of our species cannot adopt. They were willing to take enormous risks for uncertain benefits. They would sacrifice efficiency for flexibility. They valued individual initiative over collective harmony. In other words, Chancellor Morden said grimly, "We can't just copy their methods. We would need to become like them." "Yes, Chancellor, and that may be impossible for us." As the weeks passed, the situation continued to deteriorate. The defense grid claimed more victims. The plague spread to new worlds. The Purifiers conquered system after system, leaving empty planets in their wake. The galaxy's great civilizations, with their ancient wisdom and superior technology, found themselves helpless against challenges that would have been routine problems for humanity to solve. In the empty human territories, automated systems continued to function normally. Human-built machines still worked perfectly. Human-designed security protocols still protected their abandoned colonies. But there was no one left who understood how to extend those protections to the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Kextar stood, alone in his private quarters, reading through old human communications, message after message of humans offering assistance, sharing research, proposing solutions to problems that were just beginning to emerge. Every offer had been declined. Every proposal had been rejected. Every warning had been ignored. Now the galaxy was paying the price for its wisdom. The decision to search for humanity was born of desperation. With the Purifiers destroying entire star systems and galactic civilization crumbling, the surviving leaders had no choice but to swallow their pride and ask for help from the species they had driven away. Captain Yexnul of the Deep Space Exploration Vessel, Seeker had been chosen to lead the search mission. Her ship was equipped with the most advanced scanning technology in the galaxy, and her crew included representatives from every major species. "Begin long-range sensor sweep," she ordered as they entered the void beyond the galaxy's edge. "Captain," reported Science Officer Kildren, "we're detecting faint energy signatures in the direction of the Andromeda Spiral. The patterns match human technology. How far?" "Approximately 2 million light-years." The distance was staggering. Humanity had traveled farther from home than any species in galactic history. They had crossed the emptiness between galaxies to start over in a place where no one could follow them. As the Seeker jumped through hyperspace toward the distant signals, Dr. Velinara worked tirelessly to piece together the true story of humanity's departure. She had access to records from every major government, and the picture they painted was disturbing. "Captain, I need to show you something," she said, calling up a holographic timeline. The display showed 50 years of galactic human relations, but from a perspective none of them had seen before. Every human proposal that had been rejected, every human warning that had been ignored, Every restriction that had been placed on human activities. Look at this pattern, Dr. Velnara pointed to the data. Every time humans tried to address a galactic problem, they were blocked. Every time they offered a solution, they were told to follow proper procedures. Every time they acted independently, they were punished. Captain Yexnol studied the timeline with growing unease. This makes it look like we were systematically suppressing human initiative. Because we were. We didn't realize it at the time, but every decision we made was designed to force humans to conform to our standards or face consequences. The evidence was overwhelming. Trade restrictions that applied only to human merchants, regulations that specifically limited human research, diplomatic protocols that excluded human representatives from important negotiations. Here, Dr. Velnara highlighted a series of events from 5 years ago. The humans discovered that the Kessler Pass trade route was becoming unstable due to gravitational anomalies. They proposed a new routing system that would avoid the dangerous areas. What was our response? The Galactic Trade Commission rejected their proposal as unnecessary deviation from established protocols. They were told to use the official routes or face sanctions, but those routes are where all our ships have been disappearing. Exactly. The humans were trying to save lives, and we punished them for it. Similar patterns appeared throughout the timeline. Humans warning about the defense grid malfunctions, ignored because they lacked proper authorization to access precursor technology. Humans sharing research about the withering death plague, rejected because their methods didn't follow approved scientific protocols. Humans reporting suspicious military activity in Purifier territory, dismissed because the threat seemed unlikely. Captain, called Navigation Officer Tixler from his station, we're approaching the target coordinates. On the main view screen, a sight appeared that left the entire crew speechless. Dozens of star systems filled with human colonies. But these weren't the simple settlements they remembered. These were advanced civilizations that had grown beyond anything humanity had achieved in their original galaxy. Incredible, whispered Dr. Velnara. They've built cities that float in space, industrial complexes that span entire asteroid belts, agricultural worlds that could feed billions. But what amazed them most was how different everything looked. Human architecture had always been functional but chaotic. These new cities were both beautiful and efficient, combining artistic vision with practical design. Captain, we're being scanned by multiple defense platforms, reported Security Chief Zarthek. Their technology is impressive. Are they targeting us? No, Captain. They seem to be identifying us rather than threatening us. A communication signal reached their ship. The voice that spoke was unmistakably human, but it carried an authority and confidence that none of them remembered from their previous encounters with humanity. Alien vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the New Terra Defense Force. Please state your purpose in human space. Captain Yexnol activated the communication system. Commander Chen, I am Captain Yexnol of the Galactic Exploration Shipseeker. We come seeking dialogue with human leadership on matters of urgent galactic importance. There was a long pause before the human responded. Captain, your people made it very clear that they had no interest in human opinions on galactic matters. Why the change of heart? The question was direct and uncomfortable. Captain Yexnol chose to be equally direct. Because we were wrong and our galaxy is dying because of our mistakes. Another pause. Stand by for escort to New Terra. As they approached the human capital world, the crew of the Seeker got their first close look at what humanity had become. The planet was a marvel of engineering and environmental harmony. Cities rose from landscapes that remained largely natural. Industry operated without pollution. Technology served life rather than replacing it. How did they advance so quickly? Wondered Science Officer Kildren. Dr. Velnara had been studying the human development data. They didn't have to advance quickly. They had already developed most of this technology while they were in our galaxy. We just never saw it because we never looked. What do you mean? Every time humans proposed new technologies or social systems, we told them to stick with proven methods. So they developed their innovations quietly, in private, waiting for a chance to implement them properly. The delegation that met them on New Terra was led by Director Marcus Webb, a human who radiated the kind of calm competence that their species was known for. But there was something different about him, a confidence that came from success rather than desperation. Welcome to New Terra, he said simply. I understand you're here because things aren't going well in the old galaxy. Captain Yexnell had prepared a careful diplomatic speech, but Director Webb's directness made elaborate words seem pointless. Our civilization is collapsing. The systems we've relied on for millennia are failing. We're being destroyed by threats that you warned us about years ago. The defense grid malfunctions? Yes. The withering death plague? Yes. The purifiers? Yes, all of it. Director Webb nodded as if he had expected this conversation for years. And now you want our help to fix problems we told you were coming? Yes, Captain Yexnell said simply. We know we don't deserve it, but billions of innocent lives are at stake. Director Webb studied the alien delegation for a long moment. Captain, do you understand why we left? Because we made your lives difficult? No. We left because you made it impossible for us to be who we are. Every time we tried to help, you told us we were doing it wrong. Every time we offered a solution, you said it wasn't your way. Every time we warned you about danger, you said we were being paranoid. Dr. Velnara stepped forward. Director Webb, we've studied the records. We understand now that we systematically suppressed human initiative. We thought we were maintaining order, but we were actually preventing you from solving problems that threatened everyone. And what would you do differently now? The question hung in the air. Captain Yexnell realized that Director Webb wasn't asking for apologies or promises. He was asking if they had truly learned anything from their mistakes. We would listen, she said finally. We would let you work in your own way, even if we don't understand it. We would treat you as equals, not as problems to be managed. Director Webb smiled slightly. That's a good start. But there's something else you need to understand. We're not the same humans who left your galaxy. We've grown beyond what we were when you knew us. He activated a holographic display that showed the scope of human civilization in their new home. Hundreds of worlds, billions of people, technology that surpassed anything in the old galaxy. We don't need you anymore, he said gently. We've built something better than what we had before. Something that reflects our values instead of yours. The words hit the alien delegation like a physical blow. They had come expecting to negotiate from weakness, but they hadn't realized just how weak their position really was. However, Director Webb continued, we haven't forgotten who we used to be, and stopping genocide is still something we believe in, regardless of who the victims are. He looked directly at Captain Yexnell. We'll help you fight the purifiers, not because we owe you anything and not because we want to return to the old galaxy. We'll help because it's the right thing to do. What are your conditions? No conditions. Just understanding. If we work together, it will be as equals. You won't try to manage us, control us, or change us. You'll accept that our methods are different from yours, and sometimes that difference is exactly what's needed. Captain Yexnell nodded slowly. We understand. I hope you do, Director Webb said. Because this time failure means extinction for everyone. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace above the besieged world of Kalar Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 500 ships moved with perfect coordination, each one a masterpiece of engineering that combined devastating firepower with elegant, designed. Admiral Kextar watched from his command ship as the human vessels took position between the Purifier attack force and the dying planet below. His own fleet had been fighting for 3 days and was close to defeat. The arrival of humanity might be their only hope of survival. Human fleet, this is Admiral Kextar of the Galactic Defense Force. We are grateful for your assistance. Admiral Kextar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We're not here to assist you. We're here to stop genocide. There's a difference. The distinction was subtle but important. The humans weren't coming as junior partners or hired help. They were arriving as an independent force with their own mission and their own methods. Understood, Admiral Chen. How do you want to coordinate our attack? We don't. You continue your defensive operations. We'll handle the purifiers. Before Admiral Kextar could respond, the human ships launched into action. Their attack was unlike any military operation he had ever witnessed. Instead of following standard battle formations, each human ship moved independently while somehow maintaining perfect tactical coordination. The Purifier fleet, which had been systematically destroying galactic forces for months, found themselves facing something completely new. Human weapons didn't just damage enemy ships, they disabled them with surgical precision. Human tactics didn't just win battles, they made victory look inevitable. How are they doing that? Asked Commander Lindar, watching the tactical display in amazement. I don't know, Admiral Kextar replied. Their technology is generations ahead of ours, but it's more than that. They fight like they can predict what the enemy will do before the enemy knows it themselves. Within 2 hours, the Purifier attack force was completely destroyed or captured. Not a single human ship had been lost, and only 3 had taken minor damage. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system again. "Admiral Kextar, we're sending medical and engineering teams to assist with your wounded and damaged vessels. After that, we need to talk." The meeting took place aboard Admiral Kextar's flagship. Admiral Chen arrived with a small group of human officers, and their presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. These weren't the desperate, chaotic humans that galactic leaders remembered. These were confident professionals who radiated competence and authority. "Admiral," Chen began without preamble, "your galaxy is dying. The Purifiers have conquered 47 star systems in the past year. At their current rate of expansion, they'll control half the galaxy within a decade. We know the situation is serious," Admiral Kextar replied. "That's why we asked for your help. You asked for our help to win battles. But battles aren't your real problem. Your problem is that your entire civilization is built on principles that make you vulnerable to enemies like the Purifiers." Admiral Chen activated a holographic display, showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red areas marked Purifier conquests. Yellow areas showed unstable regions, and green areas indicated remaining safe zones. There wasn't much green left. The Purifiers succeed because they exploit the weaknesses in your system. They attack species one at a time, counting on the fact that others won't help until it's too late. They target systems with critical infrastructure, knowing you can't adapt quickly enough to compensate. They use propaganda that appeals to species who think they're superior to others. "So what do you propose?" asked Admiral Kextar. "Complete restructuring of galactic civilization. New military doctrines based on rapid response rather than careful planning. New diplomatic systems based on mutual aid rather than careful neutrality. New technologies that prioritize flexibility over efficiency." The scope of what Admiral Chen was suggesting was staggering. She was talking about changing everything that had made galactic civilization stable for thousands of years. "That's impossible," protested Admiral Kextar. "Our species have fundamental differences in how we think and operate. We can't just adopt human methods." "You're right," Admiral Chen agreed. "You can't adopt our methods, but you can develop your own methods that serve the same purposes." She changed the holographic display to show examples of how different species could contribute to a new kind of galactic defense. The Kethmaran are excellent at long-term planning. Instead of using that ability to create rigid systems, use it to anticipate future threats and prepare flexible responses. The Velithari have superior manufacturing capabilities. Instead of using them to build standard equipment, use them to rapidly produce custom solutions for specific problems. The Zoran have disciplined military forces. Instead of using them to maintain order, use them to respond quickly to emerging crises. As Admiral Chen spoke, Admiral Kextar began to understand what she was really proposing. Not the replacement of galactic civilization with human civilization, but the evolution of galactic civilization into something that combined the best qualities of all species. "But what about the Purifiers?" he asked. "They won't give us time to restructure our entire civilization." "That's where we come in," Admiral Chen replied. "We'll handle the immediate military threat while you work on the long-term solutions. But understand, we're not staying permanently. Once the Purifiers are defeated and your new systems are stable, we'll return to our own galaxy." "Why? You could easily establish yourselves as the dominant power here." Admiral Chen smiled slightly. "Because that's not who we are. We believe in the right of species to determine their own destiny. We'll help you save yourselves, but we won't rule you." Over the following months, the pattern repeated across the galaxy. Human fleets would arrive at besieged systems, destroy or drive off Purifier forces, and then work with local authorities to establish new defensive measures. But the humans never stayed to govern or control. They completed their missions and moved on. Meanwhile, galactic leaders struggled to implement the changes that Admiral Chen had outlined. Some species adapted quickly, embracing new approaches that emphasized creativity and rapid response. Others resisted change, clinging to traditional methods even as those methods continued to fail. The real breakthrough came when young aliens who had studied human methods began taking leadership positions. Dr. Silvek, who had spent months trying to understand human scientific equipment, finally succeeded by abandoning Kethmaran procedures and learning to think like a human researcher. Captain Jexalon solved the trade route crisis by allowing his ships to deviate from official schedules and respond to unexpected situations. Commander Lindar developed new military tactics that combined traditional discipline with human-style improvisation. "We're not becoming humans," Dr. Silvek explained to Chancellor Morden. "We're becoming better versions of ourselves by learning from human examples." The final battle with the Purifiers took place in the Galactic Core, where their leader, the Great Cleanser, had established a massive fortress complex. The combined human galactic fleet that assembled for the assault was the largest military force in galactic history, but it was also the most diverse. Ships from dozens of species fought alongside human vessels, each contributing their unique capabilities to a coordinated strategy that no single species could have developed alone. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as the attack began. Kethmoran's ships used their superior sensors to identify weak points in enemy defenses. Velithari vessels deployed rapidly manufactured specialized weapons. Zoran forces provided disciplined fire support, while human ships struck with devastating precision. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "the fortress shields are down. Enemy resistance is collapsing." "Good. Signal all ships to prepare for capture operations. We take the Great Cleanser alive if possible." The battle ended not with a massive explosion, but with the surrender of the last Purifier stronghold. The Great Cleanser, revealed to be a member of an ancient species that considered all other life forms inferior, was taken into custody to face trial for genocide. As the celebrations began across the galaxy, Admiral Chen prepared for humanity's departure. The crisis was over. New galactic systems were functioning well, and it was time for humans to return to their own civilization. Admiral Kextar came aboard her ship for a final meeting. "Admiral Chen, I want to thank you for everything humanity has done. We know we don't deserve your help." "You're right," she replied without malice. "You don't deserve our help. But the innocent people who would have died deserve to live. That's why we came. Will we see you again?" Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. "Probably not. We've built our own life in our own galaxy, and we're happy there. But if you ever face another threat like the Purifiers, and if you ask for help as equals rather than as subjects seeking salvation, we'll consider it. What should we do now? Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep remembering that strength comes from diversity, not conformity. And maybe next time you encounter a species that does things differently, try listening to them instead of trying to change them." The human fleet departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving behind a galaxy that was forever changed.